Minnesota statutes 13D.021, and no in-person meeting will be conducted in the city council chambers. I think it is important to recognize that using a video conference is different than in person, but it is necessary. Under the circumstances, we are doing the best we can to maintain transparency and due process. I would appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation as we work through the meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
with
justice
and
for all.
justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Seeing that this meeting is being held remotely, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Councilmember Brox.
Here.
Councilmember Fulch.
Here.
Councilmember Fox.
Here.
Councilmember
Here.
Liefeld. Councilmember Lund.
Here.
And Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
Let the roll reflect that all council members are present and we do have a quorum. Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes from the regular meeting and the workshop from April 5th and the workshop on April 10th? Seeing none, they are approved. Tonight we'll have comments from the audience, and for public comments, we have options for comments to be mailed prior to the meeting, as well as an interactive feature during the meeting. For the emailed comments, they have been forwarded to the city council and their receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on the agenda will not be discussed this evening. We ask the attendees use the raised hand feature and they will be invited to speak one at a time. I also want to remind everyone that the public comment period is not intended for extended dialogue. Is there anyone that would like to wish to speak to the council? Okay, I see no raised hands. Council members, are there any items to be considered? Okay, council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda with consideration that number 4 was taken off prior to the meeting. That event has been canceled. I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember
Second.
Brox and Councilmember Fulch. At this point, council, do you have any discussion? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep, yes. You're on mute, Erica.
How about now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Member Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Brox.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
And that motion prevails. Tonight, under awarding of contracts and public hearings, we have a resolution to award a contract for the 2021 Mill and Overlay Program. For this item, we have an introduction by our city engineer, Ryan Stemsky. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Our Mill and Overlay Program is an annual program in which we resurface roads that qualify. So that's a 2-inch removal and replacement of a new road surface. This year, We've selected candidate roads. We have portions of Westview, Southview, 4th Street from General Sieben to Pleasant, and Old Mill Court. On March 25th, the city received bids on this project. We received 6 bids, and we received a low bid from Bituminous Roadways in the amount of $438,874. This amount comes well within our budget of $500,000 budgeted in our 2021 program. With Bituminous Roadways in the past, and they're a contractor, and staff recommends award in the set amount for the 2021 mill and overlay program. That, any questions?
Thank you, Ryan. Council, any discussion? Okay, if not, then I would accept a motion to approve the resolution awarding contract for 2021 mill and overlay program.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld and Councilmember Fox with a second. Council, do you have any discussion? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Tonight, we also have a resolution with Ryan to let us know about the contract for the sewer lining program.
Yes, thanks, Mayor, members of the council. Our lining program for the sanitary sewer system, we combine our budget, so that's a program that occurs every other year. So we do it in a 2-year cycle. We do it in odd years. And so in 2021, we have our sanitary sewer lining program. This year, we selected sewers that basically are repeat offenders for excessive cleaning and maintenance of old clay pipe. And we have a budget amount of, $332,000 to address this work. On April 1st, we received 4 bids for this work with a low bid from In Situ Form. Their total bid amount was $272,855.90. So we're well within that budget amount of $332,000. In Situ Form has done work in the city in the past. They come highly recommended as a competent contractor in this field of work. And so with that, staff is recommending award to In Situ Form and their low bid amount. Answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion, council? I would look for a motion to accept a resolution receiving bids and awarding contract for project 2021-2, 2021 sanitary sewer lining program.
Mayor, I have a question.
Councilmember Brooks.
Did you talk about if this contract is awarded tonight, what the timeline is for this project?
Councilmember Brooks, a little unique. We have some lining proposed over the golf course area, so Dakota Pines Golf Course. And we work with the groundskeeper out there to do the lining work with, dragging equipment and vehicles over portions of the golf course in frozen conditions. So we don't want to be out restoring golf course area, obviously, through our easements that we have in the golf course. The contractor anticipates mobilizing when the ground is frozen. So that's probably December, maybe January. It'll be at the end of the year. So they can come mobilize in, get all the project done in one shot, and adhere to our city specifications that the golf course lining work be done on frozen grounds. So it'll be a while yet, and we will definitely have a pre-con close to that start date and get all our notifications out to the impacted properties at that time. So there'll be a little bit of a lag.
Right,
good,
'cause my
good
neighbors will
question.
be asking me because it's gonna go right in front of our house. Thank you.
Yeah. Questions? Oh, I will accept a motion.
Second.
Councilmember Vaughn and seconded by Councilmember Fulch. Additional discussion, council? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox, Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. That motion prevails. Okay, Ryan, for this item, we'll have you to let us know about these proposed special assessments for 2020 infrastructure improvements. And this is a public hearing with potential action by council.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I get the ability to share my screen? It looks like I'm disabled. You? All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so as mayor was introducing this item for 15th Street, our improvement, phase 2 of improvements, we're at the point in the process to conduct our assessment hearing for the project. Again, just a quick reminder, this is the continuation of our reconstruction program of 15th Street. We're picking up at Pine and extending those improvements to Pleasant. As we discussed last month in our scope of project improvements, the total project cost is estimated to be $3.8 million. That funding breaks down, as you see in the pie chart here, about $1.1 million in bonded debt, $150,000 in state aid account support. The $581,850 is proposed in project assessments, $130,000 from the wastewater fund, and approximately $800,000 from our water fund. So to determine the assessments, we have a process that we follow. The first step of that assessment rate.
Ryan, real quick.
You're not sharing.
You're sharing your screen. We're not seeing advanced slides.
Oh. Is it advancing now?
I see the assessment rates.
Can we see that, Dan?
On the, well, it was assessment rates. Now it's results of assessment report back to assessment rates. It looks like it's working now.
Okay. I was trying to keep it in presentation mode, but for some reason it's popping me out. So hopefully everybody can see just fine. And we'll just continue along this way. So as I was saying, the first step in determining an assessment rate is the city does hire an independent firm to prepare an appraisal report. That appraiser looks at the land valued before and after the proposed street improvement. The difference between the before and after values is the special benefit attributed to the private property along the corridor. We did hire BRKW to do that appraisal report. We've worked with them several times in the past. The results of the appraisal report, the appraisal firm determined reasonable value benefits range of $89 to $99 per foot for a small single-family lot, averaging 70 feet of frontage along the corridor. About $73 to $83 a foot for the medium-sized properties, averaging 95 feet and front footage along the corridor. And then $77 to $87 per foot for a large single-family lot, averaging 150 feet of frontage along the corridor. For Calvary Christian Church property, that was evaluated at $44 per foot. Now, the church property there, you'll see a little bit lower rate because they have 459 feet of frontage. So the assessment is valued across the entire property. And so with such a large frontage, that's why that cost per foot breaks down to be much less than what you're seeing on the single family lots. That was what the assessment report yielded. We continue on with our policy. Our ordinance directs that collector and municipal state aid streets are assessed at 25% of the project cost of the street and storm sewer. That assessment then is based on abutting frontage. There are a couple exceptions, and that is if we have an irregular shaped lot. We do normalize those lots by looking at their neighboring properties and finding a comparable and fair associated lot size and frontage. And then also corner lots, we do allow for a break, if you will. Corner lots, since they have two sides, the short side is calculated 100% of the length, while the long side is calculated at only 25% of the length to kind of give those corner lots a break. So the recommended assessment rates is the calculation of 25% of the street and storm sewer costs distributed across the properties. These amounts were confirmed by BRKW to be less than or equal to the special benefit of the improvements to the properties being assessed. So basically we're at or below that amount when we ran this ordinance-driven calculation. The process was presented and supported by the operations committee of the council. And so that gets us to a single family lot rate of $66.48 per front foot. And then for our church property, that $44 per front foot. The payments of assessment is quite a process, but basically we would send out an official statement in the fall time or end of summer. And payments would then be accepted beginning October 1st, 2021, no sooner than that. Partial payments are accepted in this process. Any amounts that remain after the November 30th date are certified automatically to the Dakota County property taxes with that $50 fee to do so. There are no interest or fees when this assessment amount is paid in full, and that needs to be done by that November 30th date. If they are not paid in full, then the 10-year payoff for the property tax statement starts beginning spring of 2022. And then the interest rates for that financing typically range between 3% and 5%. In recent years, we've kind of been at that mid 3%. So to just kind of give an example, picking the medium-sized lot at 95 feet of frontage, the rate would be calculated at 95 feet times $66.48. That gives a $6,315 approximate assessment amount. So when that's paid through the county property taxes, that would be $6,315 divided by those 10 installments. That would be $631.56 annually, plus that 3% interest for that first year would be $221. Obviously, that amount decreases, so the interest decreases each year thereafter. But in that first year, the total annual installment would be $853. Breaking that down monthly, that's about $71 a month, which is kind of important if you're paying a monthly mortgage to kind of figure that in your payment. And then we do on this project have financial aid with assessments. We do have assessment abatement again this year. We set up the project specifications that way to accept this financial aid. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program, is funded by the federal government. It is a program dependent on income qualification. So that's a reviewed application. The applications in the process to follow them are mailed out to all property owners in late summer of 2021. Applications are very clear on the application, but they are to be returned to Dakota County Community Development Agency, or the CDA. They review the applications, the city staff does not. And also qualification is determined by the CDA. There is a full abatement qualification, so that would be your entire assessment amount would be paid if you do qualify. And then for any amount left over thereafter, there are options for partial abatement if you qualify as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to any questions or discussion, and then ultimately allow the mayor to conduct the public hearing.
Thank you, Ryan. Council, do we have any questions for Ryan?
Your Honor,
Sure, Councilmember Fulch.
thanks. Thank you, Your Honor. So Ryan, I just had a couple technical questions. So when I was looking at our packet for all of the assessments, it looked like they range from about $4,900 to maybe $10,300. And so what was the average assessment amount that was going then to property owners with those kind of outliers? You had said that the average monthly bill was $71 per month. I was just curious, what's the average total assessment?
I would say it ranges in that $4,000 to $5,000 range.
5,000? Well,
Yeah.
most of them are at least five to 6,000.
On the for medium lots, it's that $6,000 range. So it depends on that frontage, obviously.
Okay. And so when you say that if they don't have the money to be able to pay it, so it's a 10-year term. And so does the city float or finance that money over the 10 years? Or is there a third-party vendor that takes over it and it's kind of like a loan process?
No, the city gets repaid that amount over 10 years.
So, but we're directly dealing with it. So the city always is on the hook for that money, and then we're assessing it over the 10 years. There's not an intermediary, like a third-party bank or something like that in between?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. And then is there anything that limits what can be included within a property assessment? Like, for instance, we've talked in the past about the problem of the ash trees that are in the right of way, and then whether or not they should be or could be removed at the time of a neighborhood infrastructure project, so that you could then, remove it and the stump, level the earth, put in the new sidewalk, and have a nice fresh right of way. Would that be potentially something that we could be doing, where we could be handling the removal of additional trees as we're going along in these projects? That limits us from not being able to do that.
I would say what's limiting is the policy set. What we do from an engineering standpoint is, if those trees, we walk the trees, or the corridor with our city forester, we look at the construction plans. If construction requires those trees to be removed, and I think we do have 5 or 6 of them proposed because of construction, they're already incorporated in the project because of the construction need and the cuts that we have. Obviously, if we're cutting one side of a tree and our city forester says, well, that is beyond treatment, we're not going to leave one side cut and hope it comes back. We'll take the whole tree. So that's that's where we work in coordination with the city forester and our construction program to take those ones. Now, if there's a change in policy, that's a different animal, and we're not set up to do that. That'd be something we'd have to be directed to do and follow that process. I don't think we have very many ash trees in the inventory on this corridor. So I don't think this is a project that has very many, suspects of EAB.
They're not dense in that area. I get it, along the right of way, but it is something that could potentially be incorporated. And then for instance, it's my property and I have an ash tree in the right of way. Can you attribute that tree removal against my personal property, or would that just kind of like go into the overall project cost for it all, and then going on your formula based, and then it gets divvied up that way?
Yeah, if it's not related to the construction, that expense, we don't have a mechanism to roll it in the project costs or the assessments. No.
At this very moment.
Correct.
But
we could, I don't know. Keep in mind, our assessments are determined by that value added to the property. I'd have to have a conversation with, several appraisers to see where that rates. There might not be any associated benefit of removing a tree. Some people would think the contrary, right? So that would be a question for our appraiser to see how that would factor in. But that question could be asked.
thank you very much, Ryan, for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Any other council discussion? At this time, I will open the public hearing. In the audience, if you would please use the raised hand feature, and I'll bring you in for your questions. The public hearing is open. Anyone has any concerns or questions, please use the raise feature. Seeing no raised hands, at this time I will close the public hearing. And council discussion, any additional discussion? Okay, then I would accept a motion to approve a resolution to adapt the assessments for project 2021-1 15th Street Infrastructure Improvements Phase 2.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Lightfield and Councilmember Vaughn seconds. Additional discussion? Person, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock, Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. That motion prevails. Ryan?
Sure.
We have a public hearing also for the code amendment for the Parklets. This item we have introduction by Community Development Director John Hinsman. Welcome, John.
And City Council members, tonight we've got a public hearing and second reading for a small amendment to our parklet ordinance. The council may be asking, we just adopted a parklet ordinance not too long ago. What are we looking at amendments already? I'll get to that here in just a second. I will share the screen, which will explain what we have, what we're looking at here today. What we're looking at amending is the distance setback between the center line of angled parking areas. This is 2nd Street, for example. Right now within our code, we have a 20-foot minimum setback requirement from the center line to the edge of the parklet. This works out really well if you have an 18-foot long parklet that is parallel with the angled parking line, which would be 16 feet back at this point. However, what we're seeing from a couple individuals is that they are not proposing to situate their parklet in such a manner but instead to take the 18 feet straight out. Taking it 18 feet straight out limits that area from 20 feet down to 18 feet. So we had a conversation with our Public Works Director and other city staff to see if this would be amenable. They were amenable to it. However, they did state that this would be something we would monitor over time here. We believe that we're comfortable with the 18 feet and recommend the change as it moves forward tonight, but this will be something we'll monitor throughout the summer, and hopefully this is something that can continue. So we have an ordinance amendment before you tonight. This does have a public hearing component to it, and you may open it at this time, or I can stand for any questions. Again, this would be the only amendment to the parklet ordinance would be this distance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Time, I will open the public hearing for the amendment, and please use your raised hand feature and bring you in for any questions or concerns. Hearing is now open. Seeing no raised hands, at this point, I will close the public hearing and ask council for any discussion. Nothing. So then, council, I would accept an motion to approve an ordinance of the City of Hastings amending City Code Chapter 90, Streets and Sidewalks, Section 90.17, Parklets.
So moved,
So
Your
moved.
Honor.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Welch and Councilmember Lightfoot. Additional discussion, council? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund, Councilmember Brock, Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, and that motion prevails. Council, we have a public hearing tonight for a parklet and a liquor license amendment for the Onion Grill, 100 Sibley Street. John, you want to continue?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, a public hearing for a parklet, as the mayor pointed out here, for the Onion Grill. I'll put some images on the screen to show a little bit more of what we're seeking here. This is the Onion Grill in Sibley Street here. This area here is the parking spaces. These are parallel parking spaces, a little bit different than Second Street. So these are a little bit shorter. The fencing would go around as such for about 42 feet and then back up next to the building at this location. It would not go beyond the curb. It would roughly be similar dimensions to what we saw last year, albeit a really good, nice job at what they're doing for the amenities they're preparing for this one here. So that is what we're looking at. The distance between the parklet and the center line meets that 14-foot requirement for parallel parking that we did establish within the ordinance. This is what it would look like here. So it would be at the street surface, have some decorative planters at this location and a fence demarcation. So a really nice addition down here. You can see this is roughly the extent of it as well. So you would still have the passenger traffic, or the pedestrian traffic along the sidewalk that would still be able to move through. Would not be routed around like last year. So pedestrian traffic continuing through here. We did have our staff review this. They are supportive of it. And this is a public hearing. You can open it at this time, or I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Please use the raised hand feature and I will bring you in if you have any questions or on this. This is a public hearing for the Onion Grill. No raised hands. At this time, I will close the public hearing and any discussion, council. Lund, you're unmuted. Is that?
Oh, sorry. I'll be abstaining out of an abundance of caution on this one, but
Other council discussion? Council, I would accept a motion to approve the parklet and the liquor license amendment for the Onion Grill.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Brox with a second. Additional council discussion? Clerk, oh, Councilmember Fox.
Record again, similar to Councilmember Lund, I will also be abstaining from this vote.
Okay. And please call the roll.
Member Vaughn. Member Fulch,
Yes.
Member Fox,
Abstain, please.
Member Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Abstain.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails 5-0 with 2 abstaining, Councilmember Fox and Councilmember Lund. John? Okay, tonight's under community development. We've already handled the second reading, and we've also handled the issuance of parklet and liquor license for the Onion. Tonight, we also have a resolution to transfer property to HEDRA, Quality One Woodworking, Enterprise Avenue and 31st Street. John, would you like to on that?
Absolutely, Mayor and City Council members. I'll share my screen to show you what we're proposing tonight. This is Quality One Woodworking in the Industrial Park, Millard Avenues to the west, 31st Street to the south. The red area represents their current holdings here. They have a large factory building shown here, and they're proposing to make it even larger, which is great. They propose a 50,000 square foot addition shown in yellow. This is something that has been proposed by Quality One for quite some time here, and we're eager to see this move forward. With this moving forward, there are 2 properties that would need to be acquired to make this project happen. The first one being about a 1.8 acre property located here. This is at 31st and Enterprise Avenue. The reason for the acquisition here is for some truck trailer parking and stormwater drainage that would be necessary to accommodate this property. You may recall that there's truck docks right now in this location. They would be moved down, and there's additional spaces needed here. The other would be a small property here, about 0.23 acres, that would need to be acquired to extend a roadway, which is a connection point to serve their dust collector units, which are located here. So these 2 properties here are owned by the city as part of the industrial park, and we're proposing that they be transferred to HEDRA. This is similar to the actions we had a last meeting related to HEDRA being a more correct authority to be able to provide for economic development and for the subsidies of land for development. And so this would be the action we have in the resolution is to transfer this property to HEDRA, and then for HEDRA to ultimately enter into a development agreement with Quality One to transfer the property. There'd be preconditions of that agreement related to site plan approval and other entitlements before that occurred. And it's also subject to our land credit program. Council may recall that in the industrial park, we do have a program that writes down the amount of price that we charge for property dependent on the value that's added and the jobs that are created. In this one, the property value itself is about $136,000 between both properties. When you take a look at what's being added from this property, about $3.5 million in improvements, 35 jobs, the credit far exceeds the amount of the land. So they would transfer this, we would transfer this property for $1. So the actions we're asking for you tonight is to authorize both these within the attached resolution, the transfer of property to HEDRA and the approval of the land credit sale on this. All right, so what else we've got on the property? This has an idea of what it would look like, the proposed addition being here, additional parking areas, and then a view of what the building would look like. You can stand for any questions that you may have. I also will note that we do have representatives from Quality One in the audience tonight if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Council, any discussion? This is a great addition to our industrial park, especially with the jobs as well. So could I get a motion, council, for a resolution approving the transfer of real property to the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority and approving land credit sale to Quality One Woodworking LLC? Councilmember Brock. Second by Councilmember Fulch. Additional discussion, council? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Member Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund, Councilmember Brock, Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Can I have another resolution to transfer property to HEDRA, Miller Electrical, Enterprise Avenue, and Spiral Boulevard? John?
Mayor, city council members, we've had some good activity within the industrial park. So another proposal before you tonight. I'll share my screen to show you what we're looking at. This is a property located at the southeast corner of Spiral Boulevard and Enterprise Avenue. Miller Electrical, which is located here, proposes to purchase this property to build a 17,000 square foot office warehouse building. The actions on this are similar to the last request, which is the authorize to transfer property to HEDRA, and HEDRA would enter into a purchase and development agreement with Miller Electrical to transfer that property. That would be per the land credit calculation, and also per use entitlements for site plan and other city council actions, which would come forwarded to you in the near future. When you look at the property here, you may ask, why are they looking to build a new property? Miller Electrical recently changed hands about a year or two ago. The new owner bought the business, but the former owner retained the property. The new owner will desire to build a new building for his business and anticipates growth that would occur. When you take a look at the property and the plans itself, these are some concept plans that were drawn up. It shows the building over here, about 17,000 square feet, and hopefully some potential future additions to the south of comparable size. This is an example of what he has brought forward to show what the building would look like in the future. So nice type of construction. So tonight, what we're asking for you to do is to authorize transfer of the property, approve the land credit sale. The land credit sale on this one, similar type of valuation, about $134,000, $1.5 million in improvements, so that land credit exceeds the value of the land, so it will be transferred for $1. So I can stand for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Council, any discussion for John? Questions? And I would accept a motion to approve a resolution approving the transfer of real property to the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority and approving land credit sale to Miller Electric LLC. Councilmember
Okay.
Fox, and a second by Councilmember Vaughn. Additional discussion, council? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn, Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox, Councilmember Liefeld, Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. All right, tonight we also have an authorization to consider of the city charter and ordinance administrative citations. For this item, we will have John continue.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, we'd like to bring before you a concept of a change related to nuisance ordinances. Nuisance ordinance are those type of code enforcement violations dealing with property issues, things such as junk, abandoned cars, exterior storage, property maintenance. Under the current regulations we have, these are criminal citations. So what we hope to have happen is we make a property owner aware of something, they take care of it, and problem solved. And that happens in most cases. However, when you have a situation in which there is some reluctance among the property owner to take care of a violation, it runs through the criminal court system. The criminal court system is not the best fit for these type of violations. They're not a high priority for the criminal courts. They can take a long time. The results generally are going to be a small fine. These generally require maybe multiple hearings, and each time a hearing takes place, an updated inspection needs to happen. So we have a lot of back and forth between our code enforcement staff checking on properties as they move through courts. The result of that being a small fine and not the best situation. So we took a look at this with our city attorney, Corey Land. Corey has developed a process in which code violations would not be handled criminally, but would be handled administratively. And there would be a couple of changes that would be necessary to do that. First of all, why would this take place and what are the advantages? From an administrative standpoint, you're able to directly assess a violation to take care of the time that has been put in by city staff to take care of it, which is something we can't do criminally. When we look at this administratively, we're looking at taking this forward through an administrative law judge, and this is more of a negotiation. The results of that have been more fruitful, have been more timely. And so this is something that we would like to consider doing. We took this concept forward to the Historic Preservation Committee of City Council, explained it to them. They recommend that we move forward in looking at changes at their meeting. To be clear, what we're looking for tonight is not any adoption of anything. We're looking for your direction as the council to proceed. We wanted to make sure before we take the time to amend the city charter and put together proposed ordinance amendments for this, that we had the support of the council in doing so. So I know there would be a lot of questions that would be coming up that we probably don't have the answers to right now. The specifics will come up at a later date, but the action we're looking for you tonight to consider is to have staff move forward to prepare these amendments for your consideration. And Corey, who was the person that knows much more about this than I do, is also available for questions. You have specifics as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any council discussion, any questions for Corey or John at this point? Councilmember Liefeld?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. John, so just to try and follow along, we get a nuisance call. Council, we contact, go through staff. Would the code enforcement staff then be handing out that one that we're dealing with, weeds and trash in the yard? They just don't ever seem to care. It just, every year it's the same thing. So if this little fine that we're talking about isn't what's driving them to clean up their messes, is this something that you feel, aside from that back and forth you talked about, would this give us more of a position of line and making sure that things are actually done? I guess I've never had the issue myself, but if someone were to turn me in and I didn't do it and I pay my fine, then do I have to do it or do I not have to do it?
Start out here, and maybe Corey can add to it her experiences. The one thing that I've learned is that from a timing standpoint, it's a much shorter process. And so that's advantageous. The difficulty always in code enforcement is that fine line between, a person's right for due process and the anticipation of conformance with the code violation. And I think this works out to be a more timely process than the criminal procedure. And Corey, if you have anything to add to that.
I do. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. So typically, and I don't know the exact specifics of the situation you're talking about, but when city staff, code enforcement gets frustrated enough, they will issue the criminal citation. That then triggers a whole different process, and it is very time consuming. It is very lengthy, and in the end, not very satisfying. So my understanding is that you don't typically abate things like weeds, which you could. Administrative citations is just another tool in the toolbox for you. So if you feel like for those really problematic people that sometimes the only way to get their attention is a criminal citation, you still have that option. If you feel like there are those situations like weeds where the city can simply go on and abate the nuisance for them, you have that option. If you feel like for the junk where you don't necessarily want to go and take people's things and clean it up for them, because sometimes person's trash is another person's treasure. And so you do have to be a little bit careful about that. Then you can issue an administrative citation, which then does impose a fine. If they pay it, they still have to clean it up. So that doesn't alleviate the burden of them cleaning it up. Every day is a new violation. So they could be cited again. And the second time, they don't have to be given notice because they had notice. They knew the problem was there and they chose not to clean it up. So the second time the fine doubles, have to be given notice. If they fail to pay, then you have, like you typically have at the end of every year, any water utility bills that failed to get paid, you assess those. This would go on that assessment roll. It's added to their property taxes, and they have to pay it in a lump when they pay their property taxes. It tends to get people's attention. These are not astronomical fines that we're talking about. It could be anywhere from $50 to $200. If it doubles, obviously it's going to get more than that. But it's just enough to get their attention that most people recognize they don't want to have multiple fines. They don't want to have it added to their property taxes, and they will take care of the problem. For those that don't, you just continue to fine them and assess them. And at least then you're having cost recovery. And if you find that that's just not enough, then you can explore other options. But those are the extreme cases, not the normal cases. That helps answer your questions.
Thank you very much so.
Does Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. As was mentioned by John, the Historic Preservation Committee of the City Council did have a discussion about this, and the group was very supportive of the administrative citation process. But we did also talk about having, as Attorney Land was beginning to talk about abatement steps, and specifically, like for instance, mowing. If they would get a weed violation, then sending in a vendor to do the mowing and then charging that back. And so, I guess my question for John is, John, when is it that you'll be coming back to the council then? If we give you the direction that we'd like to go towards, the administrative citations, what's your process in developing some of these abatement programs then to deal with, for instance, weeds and then junk?
Hey, council member, I wish I had a better answer for you on that. Soon, there's a couple of different steps we're going to have here. One is going to be the city charter itself. So we're going to we're going to reform the city charter commission, because in order to have the authority to grant administrative citations, there needs to be an amendment to the city charter, which is our city constitution. So there's that step of it. Once that's done, then there is the city ordinances. It doesn't mean that they can't happen concurrently on that, but those are two steps, and the city charter amendment has its own peculiarities to it. So if we get the authority from the council tonight, we'll start work on both those items. One of them is more administrative and procedural. The other one is much more substantive, and that is looking through our specific code at our violations and what amendments would be necessary. And I do know that our building official, Travis Dunn, and our code enforcement officer, Dawn West, are already beginning that process. So we hope to have something in the near future, council member.
Questions, council? Okay, then I would accept a motion to direct staff to prepare amendments to the city charter and city code to consider regulation of nuanced violations through the issuance of administrative citations.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion? Clerk Henderson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Okay, also tonight with John, we have a resolution to authorize sale of HEDRA property to Luke Siewert. John, you may continue.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I'm going to share my screen here to show you the property that we're looking at here tonight. This is a small parking lot, about 9,700 square feet, that is owned by HEDRA. As you can see, the parking lot itself doesn't have a lot of value today because we put a great big parking lot over here a few years ago, about 100 spaces. This was originally purchased by the HRA back in 1985. They were the predecessor of HEDRA to provide downtown parking for general use and also for the Mississippi Terrace senior housing across the street. Those items are no longer necessary for this. Over the years, we've been approached by a couple of different entities to purchase this property in conjunction with the house next door. There's a duplex next door, and development has been considered here. This is happening again here with Luke Siewert. Luke has purchased this property here, and what he would like to do would be to combine both properties, clear the properties, and build a 31-unit apartment building. This would be a 3-story apartment building, 3 stories over a ground floor of parking that would be at grade. And we've had several discussions with HEDRA over the past few months as to this proposal. HEDRA is the property owner, would need to authorize sale of it. And when we consider sales of property, we take a look at a couple of different items on that. One, the need for the property, its need for the property by HEDRA. In this case, we don't have a particular need for it anymore. That has been supplanted by the parking lot. Second, market value. We have an assessed valuation of the property itself, which is about $60,000. And we've discussed that with Mr. Siewert as a starting point for purchase. Mr. Siewert has looked at his property, wanted to acquire that property for a lower price. So in that situation, it would be a subsidy. In looking at subsidies, what we do is take a look at what the need for the subsidy would be. We had Mr. Siewert share with Northland Financial Advisors his financial information and his pro forma for development of the site. So Northland took a look at that, was able to review some items, but not all items. There was one item particularly related to the approval of the financing for the site that Mr. Siewert has not yet achieved. He has some commitments from a bank, but we don't have the official bank commitment letter yet, which is something Northland requires in order for them to give an opinion as to whether a subsidy is justified or not. Granted, the information that Mr. Siewert has provided does justify a gap and a need for that, but our financial advisor cannot make a recommendation on that. So this is something that we've been going back and forth with HEDRA over the last few months on it. And one of the other things that is under consideration from filling a hole in a project is also, does it meet some of our business subsidy requirements, our goals and benchmarks as HEDRA? And within your packet, I listed a few of these. There's about 10 of them all together that we look at, that projects in which HEDRA is involved in a subsidy should meet these requirements. We feel that there's about 4 of these that it does meet. It does increase the tax base. It encourages redevelopment and development investment in what we determine a city designated area. It encourages the reuse, rehabilitation of historic properties, and it eliminates substandard buildings or blighting conditions. So we believe that it meets some of these requirements, or those requirements that are listed as reasons why HEDRA is involved in subsidies for a property. With HEDRA, we've reviewed this on a number of different occasions. We did review this at our last meeting on April 8th. They did recommend approval of this on a 5-2 vote to recommend approval of sale of this property for $1. They looked at the rationale for doing this consistent with the 4 reasons that I just listed for the business subsidy criteria. That's what we're bringing for you tonight. This is a situation in which HEDRA does own the property. However, within the powers that you've invested into HEDRA, you've reserved for yourself the ability to say yay or nay to any property sales. And so what we're asking for HEDRA, or for the council tonight, is to authorize HEDRA to sell the property to the developer. The terms of that would be for $1. Now, what would happen at this point is HEDRA would enter into a purchase and development agreement for the property and would set the terms for the transfer, which would include the land use entitlements for the property and other items, so that we're not transferring the property until we're very certain that the development will take place. So that's what we're asking for you tonight. Pictures of the property, this some images of what the property would look like itself, 3-story apartment over ground floor garage space here. We believe it would be a nice addition to the downtown area, and I can stand for any questions that you may have. And okay, I did stop screen sharing, good. And I believe Mr. Luke Siewert's in the audience as well, if you have any questions for him. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Discussion.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you. I think this is really exciting about what's being proposed for the downtown area and to have some additional affordable housing options that are down there. So with that said, I think it's terrific. I'm a little confused about this issue of you're asking the council to allow the sell for $1, but it hasn't been approved by which is the city's financing arm. I guess I'm a little confused as to if they're not able to make a recommendation as to whether or not this is an allowable expenditure. Why is it coming before us before that recommendation has been made?
Council member, it's an excellent question and one that HEDRA has been struggling with for a number of months here. For our policy and what we have done with determining subsidies, we've relied upon our financial advisor to render an opinion here. And so we've gone down that road with them. They've been able to provide some preliminary review of the information, but because there is not a bank loan commitment secured by Mr. Siewert, they're unable to render an opinion. And so HEDRA was faced with a similar type of quandary with, do we take action on this? Is this premature at this point? The developer has been adamant that this is something that's necessary to move this project along. Through a number of meetings and discussions upon HEDRA, ultimately it was decided to move this project forward and sell it for $1, but very valid question.
So just to clarify then, you don't need a formal recommendation from Northland as our financial advisor to move ahead with the sale of the land for $1. It would just be a nice to have. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Council member, I'd say that'd be our policy. I mean, I don't believe there's no written rules that say that Northland has to, or our financial advisor has to render an opinion prior to us taking action. It's a best practice that we have. In this situation, we would be foregoing that to move this forward. By moving it forward, there would be a purchase and development agreement that would be drafted between the city and Mr. Siewert for transfer of the property and certain items that would need to be in place prior to that transfer. And one of those would be a bank commitment.
Okay. Thank you.
Tonight, John, essentially, we're just trying to get a motion to sell the property for $1, and we will definitely be seeing the next steps moving forward if we pass this tonight.
Mayor, I think that's a good summary. Yeah, from a power standpoint, our council needs to authorize any sale of land that HEDRA enters into. So we want to get your blessing on that one. And then we want you to understand the terms of what that sale would be and be comfortable with it. And that would be for $1. So that would be the action we're asking for tonight. And as the mayor pointed out, this would be the first step. Purchase and development agreement would be entered into, and then the site plan and other land use entitlements would go through Planning Commission and Council.
Thank you, John, for your clarification. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Councilmember Fulch, that's a great question. That we have a consultant, but it's not a requirement. Other parties. Everybody, I voted on HEDRA. needs to go forward. I just don't think we should be giving away for $1 and $4,000. It's just, we met HEDRA to justify that land sale consultant is one that gives us a recommendation. This justification is there. They couldn't answer it, and that's why HEDRA voted. I heard the word that it's a unique opportunity. We get some housing down there, but unique is an interesting word to use in my opinion, because there's a lot of properties that so think about we different what's the one that's along saying I'd like that for $1 on behalf of the city. So it's a question consultant, but we're not requiring it, we're taking his advice.
For Brox.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will also state that I was one of the dissenting votes on HEDRA for this as well. And I was mostly supporting Councilmember Vaughn's position from this standpoint of precedent. Our Land for $1 program is a wonderful program. It is for the industrial park specifically. So we don't offer other city properties for $1, just box. They go for a property of an assessed value that is determined. So that was part of the reason why I voted against this. I'm supportive of the project in general. I want the project to go forward. It just feels like the process is a little out of sync. It's the steps for a normal process are not going the same way, and that's not a bad thing. But one of the questions I asked at HEDRA, which I think is applicable here and would be good for the rest of you to hear, was, are there other projects like this in the city where we have used benchmarks instead of a financial consultant or Northland Securities in order to justify a public subsidy of land that's going to be bought and developed by a developer? John, can you speak to that?
Remember, we've had a mixture of land sales between HEDRA and HRA related to market value versus subsidy. On that, we've relied upon a financial consultant to provide some data back on it, and also these benchmarks. You know, the two I've looked at most recently would be in the project, which both had a consultant involved with the dollar sale.
For it's a possibility. It's just that it's a matter of documentation that wasn't really there, and so that's where us not is that a reason to justify development because all the boxes are checked? I think it's a that could make, and that's. That I also that was on this and kind of what the discussion in HEDRA was, the review was where that you could form your own opinion.
Oh, I think you said.
Councilmember Fox.
Thank you. Councilmember Rex, thank you for asking that question. That's actually what I was going to ask. Still the new kid on the block, and that's what my memory told me, is that we've actually done it in a down district before. I want to verify that precedent is there already, and I also want to compliment diligence all of this work between Mr. Siewert and we started talking about this last fall, a long time ago. So I think this is just a terrific development, and I'm really eager to see it forward, and I appreciate that caution and trying to make sure that some of the paperwork is there. And I think before, like, that is in place so that we can for work, especially like for our encouragement of the development. Has a novel idea here, and it's going to be really important development in our downtown district. So, but I appreciate all of the questions that both Councilmember Vaughn and Councilmember Brox brought up. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Honor. This last box is yet checked uncheckable, or are we, I mean, is it really is how much time do we have to wait for this, or it's not ever wherever get to?
There we go. Moving on, I'm wrong button. So, something we're struggling with at HEDRA is we want a process letter to come from the so that box could be checked. I think it be to but there was uncertainty when that box would be checked. You took a look at the project itself. There was support for the project. This unchecked box did not want to be the impediment for the project. If the project moves forward, which we all wish it would, it will, great. But we didn't want this to be the impediment for it. With the development agreement that would be signed, and before transfer of the property, we would need to have the bank commitment in place.
John? Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. So John, just to clarify, because, I know what Councilmember Vaughn was saying about, I get uncomfortable when we're giving away things that are for $1 when they do have value. And in particular, I mean, honestly, the downtown area, I know we were looking at Panache Cidery a while ago, taking on that parcel along the river for $1. And I think it's a little bit different with the Hudson Confluence Development Project, just because millions of dollars went into that, more than just the dollar. So that a lot more complicated. But so anywho, where I'm going with all of this is that, did you negotiate, like what would be a reasonable price? It seems like it's a lot to go from $60,000 to $1. And so Councilmember Vaughn had made that it's not maybe worth $60,000, which, I mean, if you go buy a new plot of land to build a new house, they're at least $60,000. So can you speak to that a little bit about, I'm just not fully understanding why it is that we'd give it away for $1. So what Mr. Siewert is saying is that he can't get the financing unless he gets the property for $1?
A council member, as far as determining the value of the property itself, what we went off of was the assessed valuation from Dakota County, which is that 60,000 level that improves the land value and the improvement of the parking lot itself. Mr. Siewert countered that he did not feel that was an accurate representation, and oftentimes the assessed valuation that Dakota County has is not real accurate. The only way that we could make that assessment from a defendable standpoint would be to have an appraisal, similar to what we talked about earlier tonight with the assessments that went by to determine what that valuation increase would be. We did talk about that a little bit. Ultimately, that's not the direction we went down on that one. And so without having something real tangible to determine what a price would be, that's where the $60,000 had come from there. And I'm not sure if that answered your question, council member.
Well, I mean, to do an assessment, a professional assessment, it's only like what, $350 or something to that effect. I mean, it's not like it's a ton of cash. So why isn't that we wouldn't just pay to have a professional assessment for $350 done and have that answer provided?
Council member, was an option on the table, ultimately was one that was not followed through.
Rather than spending $350, we could be giving away $1 million. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, if you go buy a new part, a new plot of land to build a new house, they're at least $60,000. So
that's worth at least $50,000 for $1. I don't know, that just seems a little odd to me.
Yeah, it's a situation, council member, in which the financial information that was presented by the developer showed a gap of at least $60,000 on this one. So whether the land value would be 60,000, 30,000, or 10,000, that gap would still be there. Now, I'll preface that by saying that's a gap that was identified by the developer in something in which Northland Financial Advisors or a consultant, had identified that was presented by developers. A need evaluation that 30 would.
But we didn't have any way to verify that. I'm seeing it because, yeah, no, I need it for $1. So, if I need it away, that Mr. Siewert is genuine and he's trying to do the wrong. We do direly need other options in our community, and so there is a demand. If you would like to speak, I'd love to hear from him. I think that he's a very thoughtful young man, and it is necessary for the dollar. I'd really like to hear that.
Councilmember Bond? Councilmember.
Thank you, Honor. So can I last box? Start and then we'll this assessment when it's justify it. Whatever says it is, then inside that development agreement should be Siewert owes on the value of the land. I think it's $1. That's what.
Member Lightfeld.
Thank you. John, can you remind us again? I think it's been a while since I saw the numbers. Tax base that this 31 unit building is going to bring in.
I don't know if I have that off the top of my head here, but 5.5 certainly revenue here on.
Available around town. After the store. Terrace across. So, different. And Sir John. Coffee shop. He wants huge and
Wonderful for no to be able to forward this and like a John Don, we see the our more to help that it's be a draw. And they're moving to town to open for which is a hard hedge except IPO going to come in the future. This looking for
So, what's the
couple around 1,000 again, I think the
we were point
initial discussions is what have been without this property that never move forward. Back property initial discussion point. You know, for the last 15 years in the park there,
right. This is- then you said there's been interest there for the land or anything of your corner.
that had a really property any property next to it. So, I have in development we look at development agency and look at from this relation cost and much for us to do for that. I so really could so it's for development with prop.
Converting the idea of moving right for 18 years. We could from yeah property or like
Lund. Remember,
I'm sure. I would say that Siewert is some deed and it, but no land is.
sure could find the area. Could you bring in Siewert? First, and then
Thank you for looking at the fundraising and it's what we want. And I'm going to kind of touch on the depending on and kind of look at the cost kind of the subsidy and the reason of project get through a lot of structures my own communities and action companies then work to get further to these doing it that will to construction.
Luke? Mr. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any additional discussion? At that point, look for economic and authority at 3 Street things identified as 19-3 dash
Yep. One.
Yes.
Thank you. You. Okay. 20. What do
Thank you. If you remember back this work, there was on and make mistake. It can't quit improve, but see those and similarly it look $5 million worth of price will the look the land block and may no pay for morning, they're training that heavy figure. Just, but we'll talk LP recommendation. There's some of our that going and wait for let's wait. Higher hand, particularly when design did it. Is the move forward. Still, but our policy 5%, as well as this about $1 million. Look, be piece being spent. Really said with the was to go end be we need and put in other vision that a partial resources part comes in record back for a couple of years, but know that so City Hall don't go let responses. They've got it on 3 to 5 for the first one tomorrow, but it's a longer process with the of the that up no scope or is the at a couple of weeks flexible that was still waiting and whether it might eligible impact some of the other aspects that are on the priority was not putting the recommendation right for them. It turns out those are not great accounting where Brady great priority tonight. So is to spend about $50,000, $20,000 there. These are consent ideas. Main staff. Through it, we also see there are some deferred number of departments.
Thank you, Is mute for a reason?
Thank you. Just thing that we're going to ahead with, could we get the revised T that so we can see again with what's been funded? To be whole, where things.
Yeah, it's later, the T story was every it's move up or down. There's I still about unfunded projects. Those are same pool, but there's certainly